Welcome. Today I'm going to assess the video game Dragon Age Veilguard using the mini video game assessment framework. It's a framework I put together earlier in 2024 where it focuses across 4 different dimensions of a game: the mechanics, the interface, the narrative, and the immersion. Across those different dimensions, it looks at the characters, quests, and the action that goes on in the game, and puts that across in a matrix. But basically, again, we apply for each of the cell in the matrix here between the dimensions and the the elements of a game, the characters, the quests, and action. I'll apply a 1 through 5 at the value. That value then is weighted. So like interface, we'll go through the weightings in a second, but like for example, interface to me isn't as important as immersion. So immersion is going to be weighted more than the interface. And you can weight each. I think you weight each individual cell differently. I also have a set of kind of bonus qualities associated with the video game, and these are things that kind of don't really fit within the narratives of the dimensions, or are kind of bigger than the dimensions themselves. And so I will rate the quality of a video game also on its replayability. So how many times is it good to be replayed, basically, right? The use of music. So I think that's pretty important in a video game. And I have some examples of kind of what video games do that really well. Is it a step forward? Meaning, is the game innovate in some unique way? And is the sum of the game greater than its parts? So if it has a certain rating, say it gets like a 1s and 2s in a few categories or whatever, or maybe 2s and 3s or whatever it could be. And it really doesn't rate that highly with respect to the assessment framework, but there's something about the game that even in the individual elements of the game don't score very well within the assessment framework, that the game itself is better, greater than the sum of those parts, right? So it has something about it, some je ne sais quoi of the game that will it makes it a little bit better of a game. So, and it could be made up that it is more replayable, it has music and stuff, but generally I'm looking for greater the part. It's something outside those areas, because if I've already given it the bonus quality for replayability, use of music, or being innovative, then that's kind of what it is. So anyway, so I'll keep moving on here. All right, so looking at Dragon Age Veilguard, I have over 250 hours currently in the Veilguard. I have 2 complete playthroughs, one of a mage and one of a warrior. I have like 3 or 4 in process now on Nightmare. Dragon Age in general has been one of my all-time great game franchises, series, or whatever. Largely going back to Dragon Age Origins. I think it came out in late 2000, 2009 or something. And up to that point, I'd always played video games throughout my life. And I had 2 young boys at that time. And they were just getting to the age where I would be able to have time for myself to go play video games that I could play by myself, because I wouldn't definitely want them watching or participating in Dragon Age Origins. But I played a lot of video games with them, like, think about it, like all the Wii games in the 2000s, all the Lego games around that time. My oldest son, we spent a lot of time playing the hack and slash Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. We spent a lot of time doing that together, because you could co-op with that one. There's a co-op with a lot of the Lego games and things. So those are a lot of what my experience was before Dragon Age Origins came out. When Dragon Age Origins came out, I'd always been a fan of Baldur's Gate, and it obviously was made by BioWare, and so I picked it up and I just absolutely fell in love and went and read the 2 books at the time, The Stolen Throne and The Calling, and just really immersed myself in the Dragon Age world and Thetis. And then when Dragon Age 2 came out, and one thing that's interesting too is each of the games, when they came out and I played them, I would probably rate that as one of my top games. So when Dragon Age 2 came out, I actually spent a lot of many more hours playing Dragon Age 2 than I did Dragon Age Origins, primarily because I could play it. I think Dragon Age 2 I could play on my MacBook, and I was traveling for work constant or 100% of the time. And so, in the evenings, whatever, I could boot up Dragon Age 2 and play it on my Mac. And so that was great. And so I spent a lot of time playing Dragon Age 2 and many playthroughs of that. Loved the story. Loved the companions and characters. Isabel and Meryl. Those were both great. Great companions and stories and characters and everything. So, and then a few years later when Dragon Age Inquisition came out, again I never had the issues with Inquisition that a lot of people have. Again, I liked it even more than Dragon Age 2. Spent many completed playthroughs of Dragon Age Inquisition. I think I even installed, because it wouldn't play on a Mac, so I actually installed Windows, partitioned my hard drive on the Mac and installed a Windows license, and on that one to be able to play Dragon Age Inquisition on my MacBook. So that's the links I went to play Dragon Age Inquisition as much as I could. And so I've been waiting a long, period of time between then and the Veilguard. Obviously played Trespasser, and fell in love with Trespasser and the story. And so that's it. And read some more of the books, read some of the graphic novels, watched, I think there was a animated movie about Cassandra, I believe. Anyway, so I've been following Dragon Age for a very, very long time, and very much looking forward to follow up to Dragon Age Inquisition, and so that's why I'm here. So that's a little bit of background on me and Dragon Age. All right, so let's get into the actual assessment here. Mechanics are the things you do in the game. So it's the combat, the puzzle, the action, the mini games, that kind of thing. So the mechanics for the characters are the things the characters, the player itself, the companions, and any NPCs do in the game are fun, challenging, and meaningful. So looking at Dragon Age, the Veilguard, the mechanics around the characters, I think are pretty decent. From the player character perspective, it's good to just above average. But for non-playable characters like your companions and other just general NPCs, I just feel it's not as good because you really don't have a lot of interaction around this kind of set things you can do with them. I guess that makes sense. And just check kind of Starfield and what I did with Starfield. I did a 2 for Starfield. Again, I think those were very, very weak characters, companions or whatever. And even on the build side of things, I think it was pretty bad. From being able to come up with builds, because a lot of the things you do, so that's good. Cyberpunk, I give it a 3 for Cyberpunk, which is interesting. I think Cyberpunk might be a little higher. I don't think Dragon Age should be higher than Cyberpunk, especially I think some of the character build stuff is probably similar, maybe better in Cyberpunk, but that's that. And then on mechanics it shouldn't be higher than Mass Effect because it's basically Mass Effect, right? So, so I think actually some of the skill tree stuff is a lot more involved than in Mass Effect, right? I think Mass Effect was pretty basic on how you leveled up characters and things, while the Dragon Age Veilguard, you got a little bit more complexity. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a because it's a little bit better than Starfield from a build perspective, but it's similar to Starfield on NPCs and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3. So decent build variety for player character. Weak companions. Mechanics. Because basically you're just using, I think our Co-Carnage talk about it. I think you did explain it really well. It's basically their extra skill slots. Weak companion mechanics, and other NPCs. All right. So that does mechanics characters. Now let's look at mechanics quest. So the quest side of things is quests are meaningful, interesting, and fun to the player. So this will be interesting. So that's that. So for Dragon Age Veilguard, it's a tough bag, right? So I think the main quest stuff is good. Main quest stuff I would probably give a straight 4 to, especially the last quarter of the game on the main quest stuff. The companion quests, kind of what you're doing with respect to with companions, are meaningful. Are they really meaningful? You're making decisions about the characters, but are those decisions actually meaningful, other than some in-game armor or basically a skill they have? They don't really. There's no. Is there the quests that actually move the character arc along? But quests in general. So I'd give that a really a poor on some of the quest stuff. But so let's look at what I did for Starfield. I did Starfield to 2 because the quests in Starfield, especially the main quest, is pretty blah. I think there's like a couple quests that are actually fun, actually going back and playing it over and over, that I think are better in some sense. Side quests. Cyberpunk, I think I give it a 3. It wouldn't be better than Cyberpunk's quest. I think Cyberpunk gives you a lot of variety to the things you do. Even, the different types of quests you have in Cyberpunk, I think, are all pretty good, and they give you valuable things, or they all contribute to your street cred or whatever else you could get. So I think from that standpoint, it's good. From Mass Effect side of things, I didn't put a comment in, but I think Mass Effect's quests are generally good because you're working towards a goal for all your quests, right? So that's good. Baldur's Gate, I did a 4. So it's definitely not Baldur's Gate. It's definitely closer to Starfield. I probably got to give it a 2. Because some of the quests you do with the companions are just so. I really don't feel they give you any good insight into the character. And some of this could be that it's just the dialogue. But main quest, good, especially at the end of the game. Companions. And they're not fetch quests. They're definitely not fetch quests, but there is a quest where you're basically just going and shopping, going to stalls and stuff. I just don't find that very engaging, right? And the Lucanus quest to go buy stuff for people. You got a similar one with Nev, where you're going and getting newspapers. I don't really feel you learn much out of those quests. So companion. Meaningful. So I might come back to that because the end of the game is really, really good, and there's some good stuff with that. Okay, then let's go to action. I might come back and visit these, but we'll go through quickly on all of them. Actions like combat, puzzle solving contribute to the game enjoyment and are implemented well. So on that, I like I like the combat. It's fun. It moves fast. Again, with the builds and things you can do, combat can be pretty different, right? Depending on what build you're running. It's pretty straightforward, I guess, in the sense that there's some box you check when you're doing the combat. You prime and you detonate. There is some critical stuff, some critical abilities and things that could have good synergy and things that add a little bit of depth to it. But I'm going to just give this a 3. It's good, but I don't think it's top tier. Let's look at Starfield real quick. Starfield I gave a 3 too. Yeah, Starfield was fun, similar to this. Starfield probably is very repetitive in kind of what you're doing. Cyberpunk I give a 4 to. Yeah, I think Cyberpunk's action and stuff is really good because you have lots of different ways you can solve a given issue or problem. you have things like stealth and things you can do. So that's, or you can just go and head in. Mass Effect, I give it a 3. Again, this is basically Mass Effect action. So fun, simple, combat, like puzzles and stuff. I've heard people, I mean, definitely they're simple, right? And they're all kind of, you're carrying a little battery or whatever, fade battery to something to get a bridge open or whatever. Was that really needed in the game? Did that really add anything? Did any of the puzzles really add anything to the game? Other than, just, I really don't know. So the puzzles just didn't add a lot of value, right? Basically, I'm gonna say that fun, dynamic combat. Puzzles didn't add a lot of value, so it's kind of middle of the road. That's what I'm gonna say. And even like on a Mass Effect, comparing to some Mass Effect, I think you can do things like with the cover, you can barge in, you can be a sniper. I mean, that kind of thing is a little bit more fun than this, but maybe I played a lot of it and I enjoy it. So, I can't rate it lower than a 3. All right. So now we're on to interface for the characters. So interface is the UI elements that the player interacts with to use the mechanics. So controls, quality of life, inventory, character views, first person, third person. So this is kind of the, how you see, if I'm seeing third person I would like, for example, in a game like Dragon's Dogma 2, their third person view was very narrow and got me motion sick. I would give that might get a 1, right? That was just awful. I had to put a mod in to increase my FOV. You can move the character forward and back in your view, but the width of the view didn't change. And so it was a very tunnel vision, and it was a very just recipe for getting motion sick for me. Again, so I might, if I was doing Dragon's Dogma 2, I might give that a 1. That might be the worst possible one. So I didn't have any issues with that. Controls do not interfere with any of the other dimensions of mechanics. I think so I think it's good. I think it's no rocket science or anything. So I think it's fine. So it's average. I think I did not use as many of the hotkeys and things as you could. So you can for the main character I'd do tab probably just as much as I would hit my hotkey for a given ability. But for my companions, I never used the hotkeys for my companions. I'm just not that good at the keyboard, I guess. It was just much easier to pull up the tab interface, which was good. So it gave me options, right? So that standpoint is good. I know someone like Carnage he used completely keyboard, hardly ever used tab, but was able to use, execute the companion abilities and things without any problem. I think some of the things with that, the only issue was the attack my target stuff was not a hotkey for that, which I would hope they would fix. I'll patch that in somehow. But anyway, so I think overall, I think it's an average. So it's good. And in the inventory inventory management wise, I do wish there was a way to sort some of your things or to filter. So from that standpoint, it needs help, but there wasn't as much like for like trinkets or say amulets or rings or whatever. If I wanted to find something that actually I may downgrade it to a 2 because of this. Because the stuff that I was talking about, the tabbing and things, that's more action oriented. So for the character thing, I might do this as 2 because basically your management, your character and skills equipment and skills not searchable or filterable or sortable. Filterable is fine. I think that's a big drawback. I mean, I think because you have to have a separate to search for a skill. If I wanted to search for all the skills that that supported my warrior's smash ability, right? The abilities that use smash, and I wanted to make sure I found all those and got all those added. And there's the icons that you can kind of tell, but it'd be nice if I could search. And similar with the equipment. If I'm looking for things that add stagger, because I'm building a stagger, I'd like to be able to filter only the stagger, or filter based on rare, the level that it is, how rare it is, if it's common, uncommon, or rare, or legendary, or whatever. Not having that, it just feels like they were expecting the game not to be a little bit dumbed down for that they weren't allowing you the ability to do that. So I'm going to give it a 2 for that. Solely for that purpose. Quest interface. So this is quest tracking information readily available when needed. I think that's fine. I don't recall anything specifically about it. Again, it would be nice to be able to filter. I guess you can hover in the map and see what quests are in a given city. So you don't need to actually go to the journal to see what those things are. So that's not too bad. So I give it a 3. I just don't know. It's decent. But nothing decent, but nothing extraordinary. I mean, I think in some sense, someone may want to downgrade this because of the hand holding along the quests. That you have this big icon that you can follow. When it's in your kind of your field of view, you can always follow that. So that maybe that kind of breaks the immersion. Maybe when I get to immersion for quests, that'll go down because I'm basically following a cursor to where I need to go. So anyway, so nothing too extraordinary there. I'll give it a 3. Interface for action I already talked about. I'll give it a 3. I mean, again, it's Mass Effect style. That fits combat well. All right. I don't know. There's not much to say about that other than it's decent. It does okay. Is it extraordinary? I could potentially go to a 4 in that one, in that it is easy to use, right? So it does pause. So it's not like it's Final Fantasy where I'm going in and it's still slowly moving in the background behind it. It doesn't do a full pause, which, I'd like it to pause. I mean, I don't need to be rushed. I mean, why rush me? Why not make this all real time then if you're going to do that? Anyway, that's a different topic. So I think it's good. I could go up to 4 now. I might come back and do that. It is decent. I'm trying to think what else I would give. So Starfield, I gave it a 3. I think that's fine. Cyberpunk, I gave it a 3. Easy, convenient controls. Okay, yeah. Mass Effect, I gave it a 4. So the core interface for combat works well. For Mass Effect, it doesn't change much over the 3 games. So that's I gave it a 4. So maybe I need to give Dragon Age, the Veilguard, a 4 for the the action interface. Maybe I do for that. Maybe I'll come back to that one. Maybe I'll give that a 4. It doesn't innovate, which is fine, but if it's basically the Mass Effect interface, combat interface, why not give it something greater than that? So I'll go ahead and give it a 4. All right, I'll give it a 4. All right, so here we get into some of the real, I think, issues with the game. The game from a technical standpoint, I think is really, really good. I mean, it runs well. It had very few bugs that I ever saw. I don't think I ever had it crash at all on me. I don't think I really had any frame issues with it. I was running ultra. I think a lot of my my graphics and things, and I just have a 3080 card, so nothing too extravagant. But anyway, so let's get into the narrative. So this is where things could get harsh. So looking at the narrative for characters. So the narrative is the stories within the game and how the stories are told. So it's important. It's story, plot, and dialogue. So narrative is okay. So for the narrative for the characters have interesting stories and personalities. Dialogue fits the characters, and the characters fit within the narrative. Okay, so we're talking about the narrative here is the Dragon Age universe. It's Thetis. Right? So already I'm seeing huge disconnects between the narrative of the Dragon Age, what they were trying to tell from a story perspective of these Evaneris and Solus and all the things going on in Thetis versus and then how does that fit with what the characters were actually doing or saying and what their stories were, what their missions were, that kind of thing. So if we're looking at the Dragon Age, the Veilguard, on the narrative, I'm trying to think if I've seen a worse game. And it's not that the whole thing was bad, and maybe that's why I don't give it a 1. But the characters don't fit. I mean, I ended up liking many of the characters, but to me, they don't fit in the Dragon Age world. And I think you've probably heard this in a million times in different reviews and things. I just don't know if I can give it a 1 or it's going to be a 1 or a 2. So the dialogue is awful. So, I mean, point blank, the dialogue is awful. The character dialogue is awful, right? So the characters talking to one another. Some of the banter stuff is good. I'll go ahead and put that banter. Sometimes good. I think there are issues that people have in some of the banter when it comes to the romance stuff, because you could have Lucanus flirting with Nev, even though you're trying to also, flirt with Nev or whatever, and that that seems a bit awkward. But anyway, I'll say dialogue's awful, banter's good. I mean, I probably, if I have time and I have the gumption to do it, I'll put together a video just specifically walking through the lore dump of Solus's regrets. That was it was a fantastic. The narrative of that was fantastic. Telling Solus's story in terms of his regrets was fantastic. And I loved it. When the companions started talking about it, so you watched the memory, and then the companions started talking about it, it just totally like screeching brakes, right, or record scratching. Just kind of got in the way because some of the dialogue and them discussing it was so bad, in my opinion. I mean, for example, talking about how the Darkspawn, how the Blight got started in Darkspawn, what Darkspawn are, and with how they got created, and they kind of the dialogue implies, or I inferred from the dialogue that what it implies, the Darkspawn are the victims here. Right? Maybe they're the real victims. And it's like, that's stupid. They're evil. I mean, that's what they're corrupted. They're not victims of something. Anyway, it's getting into it. So dialogue was awful. Banner was sometimes good. I think the character stories themselves, I didn't like them. I'm trying to think if I liked any of the character stories. And I kind of liked Davrin's because it was built around the book, The Last Flight, and I read that book, or it was an audiobook. Maybe I did an audiobook of that. I think I read that one. But they all ended, all the story, except for Emmerich's story, everything ended with sparing the person. So Lucanus, you spare Ilario, or whatever his name is. I guess in Bellaris, you also kind of, someone dies, but you don't kill that person. It's a Nurus, but is it, that's like a demon basically, right? So it's not like it's, I don't know. Character stories, not, to try to describe it, it's not, they're not meaningful. So some of them are not meaningful. Similar story I was making before about the quest side of things, not meaningful or lack meaning. Somebody lack or consequence. What was good about the character narrative other than banter? I think the scenes, any scene with Solus is good. Any scene with Morrigan is really good. And probably even what's his name? Varric. Varric. Good. So, is it the worst? I'm going to give it I think I'm going to give it a 2. Because there was some level of redemption for the characters. I wasn't a huge fan ever of Emmerich. I know this is like what's your unpopular opinion on Dragon Age: The Veilguard? I don't like Emmerich. That's I was fine with Emmerich, right? Emmerich was okay. I felt Emmerich was basically the game BioWare trying to create a Harry Potter within the Dragon Age universe. He's a professor. He teaches the necromancy. He's a benevolent / good necromancer. He's not evil, which is in some ways it's interesting. In some ways it's really are there good necromancers out there? People raising people from the dead, binding spirits and souls and things to do manual labor. That's a good thing. So I'm going off into a tangent here about Emmerich. I probably need to do a video on Emmerich, but I'd say the story and consequences of his outcome were meaningful. And I think, again, I watched Co Carnage, and he made this point too. And, in other reviewers like Slandered Gaming, I think, talked a little bit about this too. And he had a great review. I don't know if I 100% agree with everything, but it was a great review because it was detailed and frankly followed a similar kind of structure, just not using numbers in a matrix like this. Because you're making a decision and there's consequences. If you let the Manfred die, you don't resurrect Manfred. There's basically a cost to Emmerich becoming a lich that you can't avoid, right? So that's kind of a consequence. We're talking about having consequences and things. That was one where there was a consequence. Now, I personally feel that the choice of having him become a lich is the wrong choice. I believe saving Manfred is the correct choice, because basically Emmerich has a fear of death, and you're just basically letting him not face his fear of death by becoming a lich. And this is not he's achieving his career goal or whatever. He admits it's a kind of a deep-seated fear he's always had, his fear of his own mortality. So instead of having you face that and realize that, then you're just going to give into it. But again, I don't have to agree with it, right? So that's what kind of makes it interesting. It makes it decent. And so there's some of those bright spots that, with respect to this, Rook himself or herself is kind of not really a meaningful. I mean, I don't feel Rook is the same as the Inquisitor or the Champion or the Warden or anything. I don't feel the main character is that much. I'm going to start with a 2. I might come back and I know I'm going to give a 1 on one of these. I've already thought about it. I'm going to give a 1 on one of these things. I don't know which one it is. I'll wait till I do that. But I'm going to start with the 2 here. I might downgrade this to a 1 if I talk myself into it. All right. So I need to move on. All right. So now we're looking at narrative quests. The quests are integral to the narrative. Again, the quests are integral to the narrative. So similar to Mass Effect, where you have to do these, you have to get your companion loyal. So to be able to then succeed in the final mission to the level that you would like, you don't have to do that, right? So there is some meaning from that standpoint, and that the quests for the companions do that. But again, I think you have to do several of those companion quests, right? You have to the companion quests build up over the different acts, and in the third act, you kind of complete all the quests, right? And they go through this big final thing. We are wrapping up that particular character companion's quest. And there's nothing with regard to Rook too that I think Rook doesn't go through any story arc at all. Rook's the same throughout, right? So Rook doesn't do anything. So you're not. From that standpoint, Rook isn't doing anything, changing in any way to better solve, accomplish the mission or goal. All Rook is doing is gaining skills and everything. So and upgrading his gear. So from that standpoint, it's not great. So I'm probably going to give this a 2. So Rook. Rook has no arc. Companions. Companion quests. Largely build up with only few meaningful choices. So I'm going to give it a 2. So let's look at Starfield. Starfield I gave a 3. Cyberpunk I gave a 4. I thought the quests in Cyberpunk were really good. Mass Effect I gave it a 4. Quests revolve around the overall story, especially Enemy 2 and Enemy 3. Side questing helps develop the world and the characters. So there's a lot of similarity to Mass Effect 2 and 3 and Dragon Age Veilguard. I just don't think the quests do as much. Your handheld, put one thing to your handheld, like a Mass Effect, between, like if I wanted to max out Jack or Miranda in 2, there's some, I got to make decisions to each of their quests, right? And there's some dynamic on each of those different quests, I think. And then there's actually a cutscene or interaction between the two that I have to make. I make decisions on when I'm doing that, right? That based upon my status as Paragon or Renegade or whatever, that can influence the outcome of their thing. And it doesn't have a yes, no kind of, if you choose this is going to happen. If you choose this is going to happen. That isn't kind of laid out for you like it is in Dragon Age the Veilguard, where it's kind of you're spoon fed that. And so that's why we give the nod to to Mass Effect for that. So, okay, narrative action. Actions contribute to the overall narrative and do not distract from it. Yeah, I think it's fine. I don't know. I'm going to start with a 3. and there's a lot of wasted, but it's not like it's fetch quests. You know, I don't particularly mind fetch quests, like, you know, go and collect these, you know, 5 sheepskins or whatever, or lamb meat or something, ram meat kind of quests. I hate the fetch quests where I got to go back and forth. And like Fallout New Vegas is like this. I've been playing that recently again, and I got to go back and forth between like the casino, like the saloon casino in Freeside or whatever, and then the fort with the you know, the medical fort or whatever, like 3 or 4 times in one short quest. It's like, don't do that. So it doesn't do that a lot. No. So I'd say these aren't quests too. So these actions contribute to the overall narrative and do not distract from it. So this is like the combat and the puzzles. Again, puzzles add no value, but combat, combat consistent with story. I don't know what else to say about this. This is only, again, this is one of those areas where it doesn't get as heavy weighting as the other ones, but I think it's fine. All right, now to the big one, immersion. So immersion, let's look at immersion. Immersion is essentially how engrossing the game is, and the elements outside of the story that facilitate engagement. So examples are emotion, when emotions are garnered, lore, world building, voice acting, cutscenes, music, that kind of thing. So looking at immersion for characters, player, companions, and NPCs feel real, and aesthetics, voice acting, look, etc. support immersion. So this is the one where I was going to give a 1. While I do think the voice acting for the characters is good, like in most of the cases, I don't have a problem with Nev's kind of monotone kind of view, because I think it's who her character is. Tosh is whiny. That is who her character is. But yeah, but it's too incongruous, right? So my theory is there's 2 groups working, at least 2 teams working on the Veilguard, and they didn't talk, right? You had the team that did the last act, and you had the team that did everything else, and there wasn't a lot of interaction between those 2 teams. But the use of the dialogue contains too much contemporary, I'd say, wording and style for the characters themselves. I think some of the Kunari look awful now. Those things, so while there is good voice acting for the voice actors and stuff, I think it gets in the way. So I love Harding, especially from Dragon Age Inquisition Harding. Again, the voice actor did great. I didn't know the voice actor was the same voice actor did Liara in Mass Effect. That's like that's how good she is. I couldn't tell, right, that they were the same person. But I went in the game loving Harding, and I stopped having her in my party just because, and it didn't really enjoy a lot of her quest stuff because she seemed like a little girl, right? Giggling and giddy and stuff. She's a hardened scout of the Inquisition. It doesn't fit. at all. The character that I thought I was gonna, one of the characters I thought I was gonna like least was Balara. I think no one's ever commented on this, and to me, she looks like a caricature. So it seems like some person went to Disneyland and they had one of those caricature artists drop a caricature of who they were, and that's what they came up with, right? And that's what they used, the character picture as the basis for the character in the game. That's what I feel. But I ended up really liking Balara. I think, again, I think it's a testament to her voice actor. And so her kind of weird, awkward situation when you first meet her and early on, kind of, she seems to have a little bit of an arc to me, where she kind of matures a little bit. And I guess that's maybe why I liked it, why I ended up liking her and having her along, because I could see some of that arc. But none of the other characters really do. I mean, I think Nev is largely the same. She softens up a little bit, I think, if you do her quest and stuff, and she's not hardened. And I mean, Davrin's good, but Davrin's kind of the same throughout. He has no real arc either, other than he now gets along with the son or whatever. So anyway, I just don't think that it's very good. I mean, if I'm thinking of the worst of the games that I've played, and I know, I can't think of a worse set of characters that pull you out of the immersion, and then they don't fit the world too. This goes again to how they look, that they look like they are, I've heard the term Pixar, Disney, Marvel, or whatever, right? They don't, the environments in the world are friggin' fantastic. They look awesome. Character models in general do not fit the environment. So this is how they look. Doesn't fit. It's got that kind of animated look to them. The environments are fantastic looking. I mean, it's amazing. Again, I think there were 2 different teams working on this stuff. I don't know how they do this. It just looks awful. It completely pulls you out of the immersion. Again, we talk about, let's be on Quest in the next one. But it just seems like there are, I guess I don't think there's going to be controversy on saying the characters pulled you out of immersion, right? Again, it goes back to the discussion I was talking about with respect to the lore dump for Solus's regrets, his memories and things. And that was fantastic. But when the characters started talking about it, even Rook, it's just like, you're getting in the way of all this. I mean, I just felt that it didn't add any value in most situations. There were a few times where maybe it did, but in most situations it did not add value to what was told in the memory itself, right? So anyway, so without a doubt, I think immersion for the characters is 1, right? Gave many reasons. I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of debate on that. It's just awful. All right, so for quests, immersion for quests, characters feel real and aesthetic, voice acting, look, etc. Support. No, that's the character one. Quests aid the player connection to the world. I think generally it does, I guess. Even in quests I don't like, where you're shopping in the market with Lucanus, or you're buying newspapers with Nev, or you're doing the silly little artifact thing with Balara. I guess they do to some extent support that building of the world. They aid the player's connection to the world. I'd say largely, except for the hand-holding side of it, right? So that you're given everything. So I'm leaning between a 2 or a 3 here. 2, because again, all the hand-holding that goes along in the quest, in the game. I just don't feel like that's. I'm trying to think if the other Dragon Age games were like that. I mean, definitely not Origins, right? Even Inquisition, I don't think that you were handheld quite so much. I mean, you were given this more open world, right? So you were given the set of tasks when you first went to an area by Scott Harding, the things you needed to do, and you found things along the way that opened up new quests and everything. The quests here seem to be to Canned and Sue. There's very little discovered out in the world, I guess. Where there wasn't a big question, exclamation point, kind of saying, "Oh, I need to go here because there's a quest." And not that this is that type of game that would do that. I gotta think most Dragon Age Origins, though, I don't think did that. I think you talking with people, you get quests, right? You would know that you need to talk to that person to get the quest. There's someone you just go talk to and you get a quest. Or there's a board, you get the board from the Chantry board or whatever. 2 and 3, 2 in Inquisition, I gotta go back and remember, but again, I think it's a little bit maybe too handholdy. So I'm leaning towards a 2. Starfield, I gave a 3. Cyberpunk, I gave a 4. Obviously, I like Cyberpunk. Mass Effect, I gave a 4. So Mass Effect's very much mission based, right? So, but you have specific missions you're going to. You do find quests along the way too by talking with people, especially in 1. I think Baldur's Gate, I gave a 3. So I'm going to go with 2 here. Because only on immersion, right? We're talking about immersion here, in that handheld with icon directions, no little discoverable quests. So going and becoming part of the world, I did find more things to do, right? Probably why I would give it a 2. The environments are great, though. I mean, I don't know if that fits here or where that fits. I'll put it here. Environments, great. Maybe why it doesn't get a... I hate to give it a 1. I mean, because, again, the quests at the end of the game are, in fact, really good. And in-game quests, fantastic. Okay. So maybe I do upgrade it for that. Let me leave it at 2 for now. Because the in-game quests, I mean, some of the things that happen in the in-game are just fantastic. But you're handheld all the way to get to that point. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one. All right, let's move on to action. We're almost done. Immersion action. Action supports the immersion. I think so. I mean, I think it's fine. Again, combat is... I think combat, again, puzzles, the puzzles do have a purpose in the game, I guess. So the puzzles do kind of are, even though they're simple and they really add value, but they don't think like they're separate from the main part of the game, right? They support the immersion. So puzzles do support immersion because they have a reason, right? So it's a artifact, whatever, and someone built this bridge, and it's Arlathan, and so we have this, or it's you get these statues that unlock a door, right? Because someone wanted to be able to secure this cache inside. That kind of. So I think that does kind of fit. You have the blight boils and things that you got to pop. Again, while it's overly simple, I mean that fits in more into the the action side of things, I guess. That why you have that, but. There is a story about why those things are there that you have to do from that act, and then combat fits the world, the world, I guess. I don't know what to say about the combat, because I mean the combat is the combat. You're a mage or a warrior or whatever, and the skills seem to align to that. That's fine. Some of the things seem to be pretty contrived, like Tasha's fire breathing, and I think there's lore reasons around that. I guess I don't know if there any of that existed before this game. Emmerich stuff, to me, again, I think there was some reference to the Emmerich stuff in To Venture Nights or a book or something, Navaran stuff, but that's not what I knew Navara for. I mean, Navara was like Dragon Hunters and Cassandra and stuff. You get the mortality. I guess you do have Navar was Mortalitazi or whatever, the necromancers. I guess it was known, so that's if there is some connection to it or whatever. So I think 3 is fine. 3 is fine. So we have those basics done. Not a very good score so far. I have to say, the replayability. Okay. I've already mentioned I'm playing it a bunch, so I think there is some replayability to some extent. To some extent, classes and skill tree provide variability between playthroughs. So I don't think the origins add much, to be honest. That's one reason I would say this is less replayable, is it doesn't seem like it adds much to it to me. But I'm going to go ahead and give it replayability. I might switch it later. The sum is greater, but I don't think I'm going to do sum is greater for this one. Use of music. While I thought the music was good, I mean, I enjoyed listening to the soundtrack outside of the game. Again, I think the music is not consistent with the Dragon Age world. I think this music, when I hear the music, especially the songs I like out of the soundtrack, I want to get up and pump my fist. I mean, it's like rousing kind of, yes, let's go kind of music. Not what I'm familiar with respect to Dragon Age. The previous soundtracks, especially Inquisition, that when I heard those songs in the soundtrack, you feel emotion, right? I like the Lost Elf, Dark Elf, the song where you find Skyhold. I feel more emotion than that, right? I think the music in this game is more consistent with a movie. Even movies it's probably not a fair assessment. I just feel like the music here is more rousing and, get you out of your chair kind of music, as opposed to letting you think within yourself, immerse within yourself and feel the emotion of that particular scene or that particular part of the game. I think it's meant more to get your adrenaline going. And so I think the music was not, the music was good, but it was not a use of music that is worth noting as an additional quality for the game, as a bonus for this. That's where it is. Step forward, definitely not a step forward. I mean, if there was a negative bonus section, there would be not a step forward. This is not a step forward. It might be a step forward for the Mass Effect games, but it was not a step forward for the Dragon Age games. And then finally, sum is greater. While I gave sum is greater to Starfield, it had lots of faults too, but I enjoyed playing it. I think the negatives, like the immersion side of this one, I mean, it's just so bad that it can't. The good parts can't outweigh even the ending, right? The last quarter of the game, it makes up a huge amount, right? Without that last quarter of the game, I don't know, right? I don't know what this game would look like without the ending. The last quarter of the game. So I don't think I'm going to give it sum is greater. I think I'm just going to give it replayability, primarily because of the different types of builds and things you can do. With it, right? There's lots of things in the skill tree that I can go do. Now, I think that will hit a limit, though. I think I'm already kind of at it with the playthroughs I have ongoing or whatever. Because I think adding, because you could look at origins or whatever, or race, whether you're an elf or a dwarf or whatever. I don't think that adds a whole lot. For something like Baldur's Gate 3, where I think that does, right? Adds a little bit more. And I might want to play a Baldur's Gate 3 as a paladin again. If this time I'm a paladin, though I'm an orc, right? Or a half orc. Because that might be a little bit different. That's definitely visually different. People react differently or whatever. But I think and this may go to some of the being immersion or whatever, that I think that helps with the replayability. The replayability here is strictly mechanical, of having different set of skills to use in the same situations you've already been in. But it doesn't necessarily add any more or give you a different level or perspective on the immersion. I think it's just strictly a mechanical, technical replayability. But I think I'll go ahead and give it, because I do have a lot of hours. I do like the game overall. But from an assessment of the game using this assessment framework, I think the score is 26.8. So let's compare that to Starfield. Starfield was 28.6. So let me go look at my entire games here. So the highest rated one I did, again, some of these are preliminary. I have them as draft. So let's actually put this here. This is completed the game, not completed the review. 26.8, so it's the worst that I've reviewed so far. It's similar to Starfield, and I would probably say that's, in my mind, if I'm looking at relativeness of games, that seems about right. Because Starfield had so much promise. This had so much promise. You wonder about some of the decisions that are made in both games. Why did they make certain decisions? In the Veilguard, I just why change the name from Dreadwolf? I mean, that right there should have been a red flag with regard to some of the decisions that are going on. So anyway, I think this looks good to me. Looking at it from a perspective of, does this look like it's similar to where everything else is? Because it's nowhere near Cyberpunk, nowhere near Mass Effect, definitely not near Baldur's Gate. It is around, in my mind, similar to Starfield. I do think the immersion of the characters is the worst I've ever seen, or game I've played or seen. Maybe I'm missing a game that I need to think of, but that's that. And I am being generous, I think, with the replayability, and maybe I'm being harsh on a couple of these ratings, like the immersion for the quests. I could be talked into a 3 for that one, maybe, or the quests in general. Quests in general are all, it looks like they're rated pretty low. Because it's almost too that it hurts itself, because the in-game quests were so good, and the best part of the game I liked was the crossroads. Right, so I don't know what that says, that I like the crossroads. Part of it is it's discovering the lore associated with Solus. Some it's the boss fights that are there. It's kind of separated from all the rest of the story. So I don't know what that says. That maybe the fact that I did nail the the immersion side and the narrative side of it for the regard to the quests, because it's just a fun area to go explore, and there's interesting things to do there. But it's not really core to the game. I mean, it is kind of core to the game. You have to go through the crossroads to get places, but I mean, could you see the game without the crossroads and still being able to have a reason to travel places or whatever? Yeah, I think you could do that. You could find the lore out different ways, but I think it worked really well in the crossroads. So, anyway, I think that's fine. Again, I might be harsh on some of the quest stuff. Action wise, I think it's pretty spot on. It's good average, good combat, slightly above average. The characters I think are pretty awful. Again, I think there's very little arc to the characters. The look of the characters isn't great. The dialogue and the immersion breaking for the characters is stands out as why. So anyway, so I think that's pretty good. Again, it might be harsh on Quest, so I might bump that up, but one of those up or something to at least make it a little bit better. But I'm gonna give some thought. If I do change this, I will append to the video when I change. But I think that's kind of got what I'm sitting at now for this. So thank you for watching this assessment video. Again, I'll link to this information in the description, so you can have access to the spreadsheet. And again, if you do use the spreadsheet, all I ask is that you give credit with links and no name credit and stuff. So that's all I need. And I would like to thank, the game, I played like 250 hours of the game. I did refer to a couple different other reviews and things. I did watch other people's reviews and kind of consolidated what they said, listened to their arguments on things like Co-Carnage, Mortismal Gaming, Slandered Gaming, to name a few. There's some that I won't mention that I think the reviews were petty, that either clickbaity or emotional, or again, just overall pettiness of the other review, that I won't link to. But I really didn't pay attention to those, because they weren't really making arguments, in my opinion, like the other ones I mentioned, like Slandered, Mortismal, and Co-Carnage, to name a few. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.